So first of all, I think the first two presentations were spot on. This is my third rodeo, failed with two companies before. The first was consumer-oriented, driver, and there we definitely made most of the mistakes that the two other presentations focused on. The second company was tried to build an electric, autonomous-ready micro EV. Turns out it's really expensive to build cars, so ran out of money, and I think after that I realized that I did fundraising wrong. Also too focused on fundraising just in Denmark or Scandinavia. Actually trying to get outside those borders is important. Then pitch 10 times as much than I originally did. But having built a ride-hailing platform, an EV that I actually could drive, and had an autonomous driving team, kind of put me in a unique position where Mercedes then called me and said, do you want to kind of head up product and engineering for our autonomous driving department? So I did that for 3 years. And then I disagreed wholeheartedly with how Daimler was doing it. So two people I met at Daimler, we decided to found Yak, which is trying to codify the knowledge of driving structures into an AI that can coach a driver kind of to be a top 5% driver. Who, like the driver can be both human or machine. We actually technically don't care. So we call that product Safety OS. And so maybe some of you have heard about Tesla's safety score, or like generally about being scored how safe you drive. We also solved that. The big difference between our safety framework or algorithms and what the rest of the world is doing is we're trying to make it explainable and actually tell you how to fix your driving. So again, either for a human or a machine. Right now, so we're roughly 2.5 years old. We literally started in a garage as opposed to many startups in their stories. So the people that are there are mostly actually veterans. They have built cars or maps or autonomous systems, big like MMO games, which is relevant for you. So half the team knows about you guys, by the way. And have done that for some pretty cool companies. As opposed to the two other stories we heard today, our product development cycle is a bit longer than and I don't mean to, so web app or whatever it is. We have hardware and machine learning that involves research. We don't have the silver bullet for self-driving cars yet, but we think what we're doing is kind of the right direction. And then we have an app and a lot of moving components in it that I'll get into. So our ultimate goal is, so first problem autonomous driving is trying to solve is obviously guarantee that it's safe, which is the first thing they haven't reached yet. But so imagine if every single ride, hail, or delivery was 10% slower because it's overly cautious. It would cost the ride-hailing companies or delivery companies roughly 250 million euros per week in lost asset utilization. So being safe and arriving safely on time is actually two different metrics we're trying to optimize for. So ultimately, we aim that Safety OS is running on every autonomous computer and making sure we help them be safe on time, like better than the rest. That's ultimately what we're doing. First part of that is trying to first actually get them certified. Like when we as humans get certified, we get it, like we go to a driving test and we get our driver's license. So imagine that we follow that process as well for machines. So one of the founding engineers at Google, which is now Waymo, they started in 2012 and wanted to make roads safer. 10 years and $10 billion later, they still haven't made roads safer. And they still haven't solved the problem. And Chris Urmson, which now has his own company, Aurora, says it'll take another 30 to 50 years to roll out autonomous vehicles. So how do you manage a product where your big vision is most likely not going to give you any revenue before like 2030 or something like that? And to be fair, so hindsight is 2020, and so the revenue case I'm going to show you in a second, we hit accidentally, and so like you can laugh later. So the autonomous system, again, just to show the complexity, we're trying to simplify this vastly, so there's hardware, there's a ton of embedded development, there's computers, there's cloud services, massive amounts of data that you somehow need to shuffle around, you need to train your models, you need to deploy those again. It's just really difficult. You've all seen this one, like the MVP. This one actually involves hardware. I actually don't really agree with it. So if a person wanted a skateboard, they're not going to buy a car. So I don't agree with it, but you've all probably seen it, so I'm going to use it as an analogy today. So like any autonomous startup, Yak actually has most of their components. So we do have the machine learning component, which is, so we install 8 cameras, computers, wire harnesses, electronics on driving instructor cars, and rent those cars out to the driving instructors that use it to optimize their driver training process. So we help them become data-driven about it. They make more money, they can handle more students at the same time, their profit margins increase, they're happy. The second problem they have is there's a massive shortage, more or less worldwide, in driving instructors. So how do you grow your business if you can't actually attract driving instructors? So we're building basically the Grand Theft Auto 5 simulator of learning how to drive. So just the European driving school market is 8 billion euros per year. A third of those driving lessons are above the mandated legal driving lessons you need. So if you did all of those in an amazing simulator, perfectly legal. So you could move a bit more than 2 billion euros to the ultimate kind of simulator if someone built it. So for autonomous cars, you use simulation to train, to test your machine learning models before you deploy them to the vehicle, where it's a lot more costly. So we're doing the same, we're just making the simulator technology available to humans. So what you can do is you can open the car like a car sharing vehicle, put on virtual reality goggles, and then do your first 10, 20 driving lessons in this vehicle. And when you're ready and coachable, we tell the driving instructor that Ulla, sorry, I'm gonna use you now, is ready to actually do really well on the real world driving lessons. And there we record all the driving lessons, all the mistakes you're doing. You can see them in an app, replay them and everything. So we have tooling, machine learning, hardware on the car, vehicle integration, and basically a AAA plus game, like MMO game, So in this product development cycle, which is a bit longer than what most companies have, the very first, so I'm going to show you 2 mistakes with it initially. So the very first version of the car was 4 cameras, cables everywhere, massive computer in the trunk. And the only thing we asked the driving instructor to do was actually click basically an eject seat button. Not like this, but imagine holding I'm going to fire a missile now button. And then after the lesson, you just have to go to our web app where you can replay these and then tag it with some things, yeah? It's easy. So a lot of problems with it. One, they clicked 50 times during a driving lesson. And afterwards, they couldn't actually remember why they clicked the button. There was no kind of context. And also, they looked at us. So we tested this with 10 different driving schools. They looked at us and said, there's no fucking way I'm going to spend this much time after each driving lesson. If you pay me, yes. And that's actually how, when we founded the company, we thought we would give these vehicles for free to the driving schools and pay them a monthly bonus to annotate the data, yeah? Only had to raise 75 million euros to get past Series A and get closer to something that worked. Which was a teeny amount compared to the 10 billion that Waymo had raised. So obviously this made sense. But halfway through those many conversations initially, when we presented the product and what we're doing, the driving schools started asking us, what's the price? And so we hadn't told them yet that we were willing to pay them to actually help us. And then, so we had no clue why they wanted to pay for it, so we took a step back and then tried to actually understand what is the pain we're solving for them. So what the first two presentations were about, like be close to the customer and be like expose yourself to the negative feedback is kind of the first one. And so I'm not joking, this is 10 iterations later. And so I think you said even pay customers to use it if necessary, as long as they volunteer to actually give honest feedback. So we've actually deployed first, so we had the proof of concept vehicle, and then we had beta vehicles, 3 beta vehicles. Now we're moving to gamma. And we started with basically also cardboard cutouts, like push this one, and then tell me whether you do this during a lesson. 10 iterations later, now they have a very simple app where they have 8 different buttons. They can give context, and the video is not on a desktop anymore because they actually, turns out driving instructors don't really use computers. They sit in the car all day and they only have the phone. So very, very, very kind of basic things we learned in the process by throwing a product at them that didn't work at all, didn't necessarily offer any value, but like they got a free car and even some like, we'd pay them to give feedback sessions. So a mistake we did on the simulator was, so there's a picture-in-picture there. You can see like we're tracking hands and everything. We are building these 3D worlds procedurally, but most people got motion sick when they got into it. So the first time, so we had a very simple proof of concept. Like it was very far from a simulator you could actually learn anything from. So it was more like exposing potential customers, like or driving instructors, to like what it is we're going to build. Yeah, if you go to our YouTube channel afterwards, you can see a couple of videos that give you a bit more insight to it. And so average age for driving instructors is like 55 or something like that. And so they all got motion sick, and most of them they're like I can't do this, and like there's no way I'm going to buy it. And then now we've actually engaged a third-party user experience agency that's actually every month sending us 20 testers, and then we measure kind of motion sickness and everything. And so I think for most products you can do the testing yourself and everything. In our case, because we had driving instructors, there's no way I'm going to buy this if everyone gets motion sick. So having a third party that actually validates your claim and says this is like it is actually true. Turns out teenagers that don't have a mental model of how physics works when you drive a car, like they haven't been driving a lot of hours, so they don't necessarily have that like mental memory of like if you brake hard, what the body's supposed to do. When they don't have that, they just drive perfectly fine. We do tests now, and 2 out of 20 get motion sick. The rest love it. So how do we manage a product where we're likely not going to basically see a lot of revenue from car makers, tech companies, or tier ones that deliver autonomous systems to car makers before 2030, or like a bit? There are other revenue models, but to like black and white, no material revenue before 2030. So you already know that we actually accidentally found out that driving schools are actually willing to pay for it. And it's turning out that they're actually willing to pay quite a substantial amount of money for it. It doesn't really reduce our development cycle. It's still long. And so there's some challenges with that I'm going to get into in a second. At the core of like autonomous driving or driving safely is safety scoring, which means insurance company, like Tesla is launching their own insurance company now. They're looking at 8 camera streams. None of the other car makers have it, so we're basically ahead of that. Scoring someone's safety, like how safely you drive, is the kind of inverse version of measuring risk. So we're talking to some of the biggest insurance companies here in Europe. And also, so we detect and correct driving students, like make them safe. After that, we then help them insure and certify them. And ultimately, if we can help millions of driving students worldwide to become safe drivers, certify them, so the driving test offer technology to Trafikstyrelsen and so on. And then ensure them, if we can do all of that, we can also do it for machines in the end, because we don't really care about the underlying driver. The driving decision is either safe or unsafe. So in this very long development cycle, we're 2.5 years into it now and still don't have a product pre-revenue. How do you manage that from a technical user experience and commercial market fit? So I don't know if you can see it. I'm happy to show it afterwards if you want to see it. So first proof of concept vehicle was February 2020. Then we did an alpha vehicle, actually 8 integrated cameras, no wires visible. There was actually an app, you could use it, but it didn't add any value to the driving school. But at least they could see that we could actually build something that was stable and was working. From a machine learning perspective, we did a research paper where we benchmarked our algorithms to one of the market leaders in autonomous driving that has a publicly available kind of safety framework. And we could show with data that we could beat it by a wide margin in simulation. Not real world, but in simulation, but still kind of like if you do your VC, if you want to kind of test this with other researchers or academics, you can actually verify it. So that's kind of, so the machine learning is taken care of. Technically, we can show that we can actually produce something that works. We are described how we scale it. So most VCs would go, there's no way you can scale upfitting all of these vehicles. And then when we tell them, well, we're certifying Kia dealerships and they can upfit 10 to 20 per month. So I don't scale vertically, I scale horizontally. I can just certify more Kia dealerships worldwide. So it's easy for me to scale. So that's not actually the bottleneck. Then comes price, which the other two talks also talk about. Until then, we just so we realized they're willing to pay for it, but we just didn't talk price for 1.5 years. And so we were like, so Germany is actually the biggest driving school market more or less in the world. Only China is bigger, but like the average revenue per student is like 10 times as high in Germany as in China. And so we're like, okay, how do we test the customer's willingness to pay for this without ruining the market? So I literally called up my old driving instructor in Padborg and I said, har et godt tilbud til dig? No, so I actually just asked him whether he wanted to be a beta tester and like whether we could discuss pricing of this in an honest way, which he also gave me a ton of introductions. So when we actually started trying to take pre-orders and like asking them, would you be willing to pay 6,000 euros up front and something per month and something per student for this type of technology? And we actually got a lot of pre-orders in. So non-committed pre-orders, but still people who had to pay a deposit, like take out their credit card and actually not knowing whether they would get it back. So we basically told them you're not getting deposit back. Then going from alpha vehicle to beta vehicle. So first vehicle basically was a test. It broke on the way down when we had to deliver it to the customer, like a soldering patch, like from the shaking vibrations on the highway, it just broke off and then it didn't work anymore. So we had to stop at a friend on the way down to southern Germany to actually solder it again. Then 3 beta vehicles, 2 in Denmark, 1 in Germany. So showing that the technology works in 2 different markets. 2 different markets are willing to pay for it. Then we started taking pre-orders in Germany, still uncommitted, but still so pretty substantial contractual legal framework that involved them having to engage multiple lawyers and so on. So I guess so at some point I wasn't sure whether they actually wanted this, so they wanted to negotiate. Biggest customer is in Hamburg. And so they wanted to negotiate and said, you'll have to come to Hamburg. And if you expect some kind of exclusivity in your area, don't come to Hamburg. And so they ended up coming to Hamburg, paid their own tickets and everything. And we did it on a Saturday because I said that's the only day I can do it. So test your customers. So some customers say it's too expensive. They will all say that, always. But some customers will also just use it to negotiate against you. Finally, talk to the customers that love your product and that can see the vision and understands the vision, and then actually engage them more in the testing process. And so this is actually our first customer, and he's getting the first 2 committed vehicles in 1st of September, where we're going to ship our first kind of invoices, where we'll only be able to bill a little bit software revenue. That's the interesting part, simply because it's too immature. So I wouldn't invoice too much until I feel comfortable that it's actually mature enough to justify what the invoices I'm sending. So that was it.